Hey guys, long time no see. I know that's kind of how it typically goes on this channel, and I'm sorry for that, but I've been in the mood to make some videos lately. By lately, I mean like for the past month, and I am now finally getting to it. So here I am giving it another go. I wasn't entirely sure where to start with these new videos. Well, hopefully videos, because I've already done and failed at the Getting Back to BookTube challenge, or tag. So I figured that instead of doing any tags or anything, I would just talk about the books that I've read so far in 2018. I'm going to be going through the books that I've read from January to May 2018. It's not a lot because, one, I'm kind of a slow reader, and two, especially during the school year, I do not get to read that much, and January through May is, you know, the spring semester. So I only have 10 books to show you guys, but let's just get into it. The first book that I read this year was Unravel Me by Taherah and Mafi, the second book in the Shatter Me series. I have some conflicting opinions on this series. I think personally it was a little overhyped for me and I just had too high of expectations. Oh my god, my computer just fell and almost broke. It didn't like actually fall, I caught it because I'm a genius, but obviously not because I didn't build a good stand for it. Okay, 1 second. Okay, hopefully that's better. I fixed it. It's a little more stable, I think. Oh, that was terrifying. I cannot break my computer again. Alright, where did I put this book? Here it is. Yeah, this book just, I guess I went into it with too high of expectations. Personally, I just found the book to be a little bit too focused on the romance in it. And especially in Unravel Me, the first half of the book, I had trouble getting into it. As soon as Ortner showed up, I was like, okay, let's do this. So I guess basically my new relationship with this series is like, I'm here for Ortner, and the rest of the plot, like, I'm just not invested in it. But I definitely want to continue reading these books for Ortner because obviously I've only gotten to Unravel Me. There's still so much more to explore. Yeah, so that's the first book that I read in 2018. Next is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Ness, which I actually listened to on audiobook, and I would highly recommend it. This story really just like comes alive in audio format, and the narrator is fantastic. How do I explain this book? The general premise is that like in stories you have your hero, the chosen one, or as they're called in this book, the indie kids. And then there are the rest of us who aren't the chosen ones, who aren't meant to save the world or do any of that crazy stuff, and that is who this book follows. This book follows a group of high school seniors just trying to make it to graduation as the world seems to be ending around them, and not in that like high school melodramatic way, but like in the way where there are weird lights spreading from the sky and kids are ending up dead and there are zombie deer and weird things like that. So like kind of high stakes. But again, this stuff is kind of tangential to the story that we follow. I really love this book. It's such a unique story, and it really deals with the issue like you don't have to be the hero of this grand story to be valid, for your story to be valid. You are the protagonist of your own story. Everyone has their own story, and I just thought that was a beautiful message from it, and it is just done so well, and the characters are all really great. Another thing about this book that I really loved was I found that it had really good OCD representation. I have struggled with OCD for many years now, and the main character struggles with OCD. He has like obsessive hand washing and things like that. I just thought that it did a really good job showing that, and I really related to the ways that the main character struggled with these like thought spirals and obsessive thoughts and things like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I would highly recommend the audiobook. Alright, the third book that I read this year was Roomies by Christina Lauren, or Christina Loren, I don't know. It's like Ralph Lauren, it's Ralph Lauren, I think. That's how they say it in Friends. Anyway, that was a tangent. So this is a really cute contemporary rom-com book that features Broadway music and Irish accents, so sign me up. That was horrible. So the main character, Holland, is a 20-something. She's living in New York City after graduating. She's working at the theater that her uncle's hit Broadway show plays at. And in her meantime, she is casually stalking this cute busker at one of the subway stations. So then the lead violinist for the Broadway show quits unexpectedly, and Holland suggests that they use this cute busker. So Calvin comes in and plays for the part, and he is fantastic. There's only one problem, and that is that he has been in the US illegally for 7 years. As a joke, one of Holland's co-workers suggests that she marry him to give him a green card, and here the ridiculous rom-com ensues. This book is equal parts funny and sexy, like Calvin himself, and I found it to be the perfect book when I was in a reading slump. It just kind of got me out of it, and it was really fun and cute, and yeah, if you want a fun, cute read, check out Roomies. Also, there's been news that this book is being made into a movie, I think starring Jenna Duane. So that's cool. I would love to see this book as a movie. I would be so in love with whoever plays Calvin, because I love Calvin. He's adorable. Next up is a book I'm sure all of you are familiar with, Simon vs. the Homo sapiens Agenda by Becky by Becky Albertalli. I got there. Need I say more? If you somehow have not heard about this book, it follows Simon Spear in his relationship with Blue, this anonymous boy that he's been emailing with back and forth and falling for. This book is a coming out story, and it's also just a story about high school, about friend drama and other high school drama, and it's really a beautiful story. I don't know what else more to say about it because I feel like you all probably know it and have loved it and read it. Obviously, it got made into a movie this year, Love, Simon, which was also fantastic. So if you somehow have not read this book, go and read it. It's fantastic. The fifth book that I read this year was Zenith by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. So a team of female space pirates led by a captain running from a death sentence on her home planet gets caught in the middle of a galactic conflict that leads right back to her past and to her ex. Have I intrigued you yet? I really enjoyed this book. I found the characters to be very entertaining. I think that Sasha and Lindsay did a really good job world building, especially in sci-fi. I think that world building can be a really big obstacle because a lot of times the exposition seems to just like get bogged down with it because you need to establish all these things and it kind of hinders the development of the story, and I think that Sasha and Lindsay were able to bypass that well. Overall, this was a really fun book. It had a really cool premise and I'm looking forward to the second one. Okay, this next book that I had is maybe a little bit weird to include on here. It's a book that I read for class. Actually, I was in a Introduction to Cultural Anthropology class, and this is the final book that we read and we did like our final papers on, and it is Life and Death on Mount Everest, Sherpas and Himalayan Mountaineering by Sherry B. Ortner. It's an anthropological study of Sherpas, the ethnic group in northeastern Nepal, who have largely become associated with Himalayan mountaineering since like the beginning of the 20th century when mountaineering in this area really took off. The writing is very accessible. It's not like a book strictly written for professional anthropologists or anything like that. Like I would not be able to understand it then. It's definitely written for like the layperson. And what's interesting is that it definitely talks about like Sherpa culture and different anthropological like themes within that, but it also talks about mountaineering culture, which is really interesting. And it goes through this through a variety of like anthropological lenses. It talks about gender, it talks about kinship, it talks about like marriage and gifts and commodities, etc. All that good stuff. I've got a bunch of like notes in here because I had to write a paper on it. But yeah, it was a cool read and I learned a lot about Sherpas, about Nepal, and about Himalayan mountaineering, and it uses a bunch of like true examples of different expeditions on Everest, on K2, on other Himalayan mountains, and it's a really interesting read and a really interesting look into a way of life, two ways of life really that I know nothing about. Okay, so the next two things that I read were comic books, and I don't actually have the physical copies because I read Kindle versions of them, but those were Captain Marvel Volume 1, In Pursuit of Flight, and Captain Marvel Volume 2, Down, by Kelly Sue DeConnick. I've been wanting to get into reading some comics for a while now, and what with Captain Marvel coming into the MCU and she is gonna kick some ass and set things right, I figured why not give her a go. I've always been really daunted with comic books because I never know where to start because like there's just such a large canon. So this is where I decided to start for these books, and I think it was a good place. There's definitely like a story of Captain Marvel before these, but I think it's a good introduction to her character. This particular like arc that I'm reading is a 3-series arc. There's one more volume in it. I am definitely going to continue reading these because the storyline is awesome. Carol Danvers is a fucking badass and I love her, and the art also is stunning. So I'm really excited to get further into her story. And if you're looking for a comic book with a badass female superhero, and you know, Captain Marvel is coming out in January, I believe, I would totally recommend giving these a go, and I think that this is a pretty good place for me to start. I then read Alice by Christina Henry, and this is just a really dark, twisted retelling of Alice in Wonderland. I do want to say that this book does deal with some sensitive material. Sexual assault, memories of sexual assault, and its further attempts of it are prominent in the book, and so I think readers should definitely be aware of that before going into it. Like I said, it's a really dark, messed up retelling of Alice in Wonderland. It's set in a city that's divided into a wealthy, luxurious new city and a crime-ridden old city. And Alice is actually a patient in a mental hospital years after her first encounter with the rabbit at the beginning of this book. The writing is really outstanding. It was a really unique approach to this story. Like, there are a lot of retellings. There are a lot of retellings of Alice in Wonderland. This was definitely a unique one, also a very disturbing one. So while I think that this book is super creative and super unique, and I really want to read the second book in this series and see kind of what happens with these characters, I do think that readers going into this book should keep in mind that it does feature a lot of like sexual exploitation of women, and sexual abuse and assault are common themes. On a lighter note, I also read Bad Girls Throughout History by Shen. This is a collection of mini biographies of women throughout history who had rebelled against their expected roles in society. So that's what it means by like bad girls. These women all did amazing things. They are inventors and they are warriors and they are advocates and they're just so amazing. It goes from ancient times right up to present day. Like I think it's got like Ruth Bader Ginsburg in here. Malala is the last one. Yeah, so like literally right up to present day. This book also has beautiful artwork in it. Like this is like the setup. It has, you know, the biography and then like a portrait. And yeah, it's just like, the art is so beautiful and I would highly recommend reading this book. It's, you know, it's an easy read. I really love reading this and learning about all these amazing women. It was super inspiring and empowering and I think that everyone should read it, frankly. And then the last book that I read in May, last but certainly not least, was The Scoprio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This is one of my new favorite books. Like, I love it. It is my favorite book that I've read so far this year. This is, I think, one of Maggie's lesser read books. I think it's like fairly well known, but I don't think as many people read it as like say The Raven Cycle, which I have not read yet. This is actually the first book of hers that I've read and I am hooked. I could rave about her writing endlessly, but basically like there's something about it. It's so subtle and like so authentic that you start reading it and you're like, okay, this is fine. And then like halfway through the book, you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, I can't even put into words what it is about her writing that is so good. It just is, and it just like, it feels so real and true. This book takes place on this island where there are these annual horse races, the Scoprio races, except the riders are not riding like normal horses, they are riding water horses, which are fearsome creatures that emerge from the sea every autumn and would like to eat their riders. The characters, the relationships, the plot, I love everything about this book. Obviously, the writing. One of the coolest things I found about it, and one of the things that I think like it was one of its greatest achievements, is that there's something about it that just feels so timeless. Until like 3/4 of the way through this book, I had no idea when it took place. Like, it could have been like 1890 or like today, and I just thought that was so cool. I was like, I want to do that one day, like read a book where people are like, wait, what year is this? Like, what is the technology that we are dealing with? What is the social like status and circumstances and everything? And I just thought, yeah, so I thought that was really cool. Anyway, I highly recommend this book. It's one of my new favorite books. I totally want to read it again. I really want to listen to the audiobook. Yeah, and I just like, I love these characters, and I finished it and I was like when I started it and when I was maybe like halfway through, I was like, okay, like this is good, but I'm not in love. And then I finished it and I was just like, oh my god, I want more. Alright, so those are all the books that I read from January to May of 2018. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what books you guys have read, if there's anything that you suggest, if you have read any of these, and what your thoughts are on them. I'm sweating. I forgot how exhausting this is to do. Summer is definitely looking to be a better reading period for me. I've already read like a few books, so things are looking up, and I am looking forward to reading some more great stories and talking more with you guys about them. So that's all for today. If you like this video, please hit the like button down below, and if you'd like to see more from me, please hit subscribe. All my information on my like Twitter and Instagram links and blah 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 is all down below, self-promotion, blah blah. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!